No, that's okay.
You got it.
Yes, I do. So good morning, everyone, or afternoon. Welcome to our lunch and learn session today that is set to break down some of the finer details of what it means to become a certified B Corp business. We'll dive into what exactly a B Corp is and how this robust certification impacts your business and the world. And then we'll look at what it takes to make this social and environmental magic happen. To help us make sense of it all, we have Lee Tonito and Rob Schwetz. I hope I said that right, Rob, who are both B consultants trained by B Lab Australia. So I'm going to hand over and welcome Lee and Rob.
Excellent. Thank you, Stacey, and thank you to the Penrith Valley Chamber of Commerce for the opportunity to have this discussion today. And a special welcome to Sarah from Four Pines. It's always great to have an existing B Corp support the movement and come in and share some sage advice in terms of what it takes to become one. But I think the ongoing journey for the ongoing certification once you do become a certified B Corp as well. So apologies for the NAF metaphor on the title, to be or not to be, but this is sort of quite a significant discussion we have with clients around deciding whether or not to certify, and we'll get into some of the finer details as we move through the discussion today. So if Lee, I can get you to move to the next one. So just before we kick off, I'd like to begin today by acknowledging the traditional custodians of the land on which we meet today and pay my respects to their elders past and present. I extend that respect to Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders people here today as well. We'll move on to the next one, and just my mugshot, which was taken a few years ago. It's obviously a tad bit younger. Founding partner in a strategy firm called the Growth Activists. We work on whole of business approach to ESG and sustainability initiatives for a number of clients across fashion, retail, MarTech, aged care, SMEs, startups, and particularly focused on B Corp certification and both the positive implications of actually going through that certification process as well. I'll hand over to Lee and she can introduce herself now as well.
Thanks, Rob, and welcome everyone. I'm a senior advisor in B Corp certification, working with Rob at the Growth Activists. And I believe that we must be the change we want to see in the world. And my mission in life is to help businesses be a force for good. And too often I see businesses struggling to either develop or implement their ESG plans and manage their business impacts, both positive and negative. And so hopefully at the end of today, we'll help you unlock any barriers with regards to B Corp certification in the design and implementation of what you've been thinking about for your social and environmental performance management. So thanks, Rob, and over to you.
Excellent. If you want to skip through the slide.
I'll keep going.
Cool. So some of the key points we'll cover today, we'd like to start off with a bit more of a macro context and some of the key indicators that we're seeing around ESG and sustainability. Dive into the details around B Corp in terms of what it is, the pathway for B Corp certification, and then we'll finish on some key considerations should you decide to go down the pathway, and a bit of time for Q&A at the end. So I think we'll keep on hearing, we'll flip on to the next one, please, Lee. Keep on hearing the term sort of, ESG and sustainability, but what does that actually mean as an owner or employee or an advocate for sustainability within any business, not only in Australia, but globally as well? And just some of the key indicators that we're looking at, and this is really coming from a talent acquisition and talent retention point of view. And one of the key stats we found, which was quite interesting, was that nearly 64% of millennials won't take a job with an employer that lacks a strong corporate social responsibility platform. And even more indicative from a younger generation, 85% of Gen Z employees believe companies have an obligation to help solve social problems. And even when we're talking to recruiters, for example, right now, sustainability and ESG has become a key imperative in terms of how potential employees are assessing their potential employers, or up to 40% of potential candidates are now interrogating their employers around what their ESG and sustainability initiatives actually encounter. And if you don't have an answer, you're off the short list in terms of a potential employer. Next one, please, Lee.
Yeah. There we go.
Cool. Even working with larger enterprises or even larger businesses across the country as well. Telstra came out about 6 months ago and basically said they're putting all their suppliers on notice. They're expecting them to be carbon neutral by 2030 and expecting them to actually adopt a sustainability and ESG approach. So if you are working with even any medium-sized or large enterprises across Australia, these initiatives will become almost a key mandatory in terms of working with these businesses, ensuring that you actually have decarbonization strategies in place and that you actually have a solid ESG strategy in place as well. One of the things we like to look at is movement of money. And this is a bit of a key, actually a bit of a surprise to us in terms of this stat that was delivered by the Responsible Institute Association of Australasia. And just even in the last year, investments into ethical investment funds have actually reached 43% of every professionally managed dollar, which actually, when you take into consideration superannuation, is around $1.54 trillion. So, a significant amount of funds under management in the sustainability space, into sustainability funds. And I'm sure even as a founder or as a owner of a company, you'd find that most of your super funds now do have an ethical choice when it does come down to the choices of where money can flow from an employee point of view as well. Next, please. And even workspaces are becoming much more integrated into the overall well-being. And it's not just around energy consumption, environmental impact, and carbon consumption. It's actually around becoming much more of a integrated place where people can actually encourage their own well-being. We looked at this example from Google in New York, where they specifically designed the building to actually connect to nature, connected to the riverside frontage that they were located on the Hudson, and to create much more numerous outdoor open spaces. So again, it's not just actually creating a carbon neutral space, but also creating an overall space which is environmentally suited for employee well-being. Next one, please, Lee. And bit more of a touchy point around how businesses are being much more carefully scrutinized here in Australia. So some of the research that's come out from the ACCC is that they're stating 40% of any ESG claims may be fraudulent. What they're looking to do over 2023 is be much more going to increase the scrutiny on these claims, really trying to deflect greenwashing and trying to ensure that any type of claims made across the board from an ESG point of view from any business can be substantiated and aren't false or inflated claims. Next, please. And even from a consumer decision point of view, sustainability and ESG practices for businesses are becoming much more of a key deciding factor in terms of where they're spending their money and who they're willing to open their wallet for. So 8 out of 10 customers expect all businesses to be doing everything they can to support environmentally friendly practices. And 40% will stop purchasing from businesses that don't support these practices as well. And we can only see that factor increase as time goes on as well. Next one, please, Lee. And just some examples in terms of where the ACCC has uncovered some greenwashing and false sustainability claims. $1 million fine to Woolies in 2021 about misleading environmental claims for one of its home brand products. $200,000 to Kimberly-Clark around flushable cleansing cloths, and even smaller fines around $12,600 for misleading claims on coffee cups. And misleading claims on certified organics as well. So again, just being much more cautious around the claims that you're making and ensuring that the claims that you actually do make as a business can be substantiated. I'll hand over to Lee now, and she'll take you a bit more into the macro view of what a B Corp is.
Thanks a lot, Rob. And so let's get a little bit into the nuts and bolts about what B Corp is about. And we'll start with a bit of the history, which I think is really interesting. B Lab was started in Pennsylvania, USA by three co-founders, Jay Cohen Gilbert, Bart Houlihan, and Andrew Cassoy. And today, the movement has grown to include B Lab global partners in US and Canada, UK, Europe, Australia, and New Zealand. There's a dozen countries in Latin America and also in APEC. And in addition to the B Lab Global Partners Network, there is a standards body, which is called B Lab Inc. And their main role is standard development and standard review and verification. And as I think Sarah may know, that at the moment we're going through a bit of a standards review for rollout in 2024. And that's the body that coordinates it globally. And the leading work of B Corp is the certification process. And today there's more than 6,000, about 6,200 B Corps, with demand ever increasing each year. And B Lab in Australia and New Zealand was formed in 2013, and all with the aim to improve the culture and practice of business so that the economy through business builds community and also regenerates the environment. The Australian and New Zealand team is based in Melbourne, and in 2022 they hired a dedicated New Zealand country manager due to the growing demand in New Zealand for certification. Now, one of the things that binds all of us together in the B Corp movement is the Declaration of Interdependence. And this is a statement of the values and beliefs that bring every B Corp together. So in the interests of time, I won't invite someone on the call today to read this out, but it's a very powerful statement that really galvanizes the movement together. And as Rob and I, B consultants, B facilitators, as well as when you become certified B Corp, you sign up to this Declaration of Interdependence. Now, the community, as I said, is really growing in Australia and New Zealand. And the exciting part of that is that there's many more consumer-facing brands and bigger businesses. You may have read that Unilever late last year was a new B Corp in Australia and New Zealand. We have Danone, Oceania, Sinlat, Kiwi Bank, Kathmandu, T2, Liberty Financial, Bank Australia. However, with the growth in all of those large enterprises, the movement actually started in the small to medium enterprise area. And so SMEs still make up some 70%, and they're having a really stunning impact. Some of you may be familiar with Sendle as a package distribution company, Who Gives a Crap, Paper Goods, and a range of impact consultancies are really making a difference. And B Lab recognises not only the important impact that SMEs make, but also the larger role of bigger businesses in exerting their influence around making positive impacts and minimising negative impacts. So a high-level view of the B Impact Assessment, like the name says, it assesses the impact of your business. And it's a very adaptive assessment tool. It has some 74 tracks available, and you start off with a track. You describe the size of your company, the number of employees, your industry sector, and also the market and geography. And these criteria are really important, particularly size, sector, and country. And one of the clients of the Growth Activist actually has a regional business in APEC, and the questions are, as I said, adaptive. And so they do assess air quality for that company, for example, in Thailand, and that has a higher weighting of points compared to the company's operations in Australia. And so the assessment is quite intuitive in that way. And all companies, as you would recognize, look at the variety we have on the Zoom call today. You know, there's a very different environmental footprint between a management consultancy, the Hicks Group, and also a coffee roaster, you know, for example, or indeed a brewery. In all, there's some 250 questions that it's a very comprehensive assessment across 5 areas. And every 3 years, it's not a static assessment. Every 3 years, you go through a renewal process. It's certainly not set and forget. And the benefit of that is that within your business, you're embedding continuous innovation and improvement. So who can certify? Well, basically all for-profit businesses. And as I said, it's customized based on your industry, size, and geography. And the key is that you must be in operation for at least a year before you can become certified. And that's a relevant point when you think about startups. And so we do encourage startups to actually use the business impact assessment as a framework when they're setting up their business as a planning tool in their first year, because they're going to really embed a solid foundation and kick off the business in the right way. And that first year really kicks in from the first contract you either have with your customer, supplier, or employee. Now, there's 3 core requirements within the certification. So the first one is the social and environmental performance. You take the assessment, and post verification, you need to achieve 80 points. The second requirement is the legal requirement, and this involves an amendment to your constitution in your business to include a purpose clause and a stakeholder clause. And the legal requirement is a great positioning and signaling device to your ecosystem within your business, that you hold yourself to a higher level of accountability for your decision making. And it means that you take into account all of your stakeholders, your employees, customers, suppliers, shareholders, community, and also the environment. And the legal requirement is really good for business owners and founders, because it protects the mission that you have signed up for your business through capital raises and any leadership changes. And it also gives entrepreneurs and directors a great deal of flexibility when they're assessing potential sale and even financing options, liquidity options. The third requirement within the B Corp certification is the B Impact Report. And this requires you to make your score transparent as part of your B Corp profile on the B Corp directory. And so with that, I hand back to Rob.
Great, thank you, Lee. We'll dive a bit deeper into the actual assessment itself and look at some of the sort of elements that you're going to be assessed on, should you choose to go down the B Corp pathway as well. So, you know, it's why the B Corp assessment? I think when we actually looked at a range of how companies are being assessed against their sustainability credentials, what we found was that B Corp was probably, or not probably, is the most comprehensive whole of business, globally recognized certification in the ESG space. You do find certifications which can be product-based, such as fair trade, or be certified against specific areas around sustainability, such as climate active. But this is one of the few that actually looks at the whole of business in its entirety and the impact you're having across the 5 key areas that are highlighted on the bottom, which we'll touch on in a moment. To achieve certification, you must actually provide evidence of good practice across those 5 key areas. One of the key mantras from B Lab is no proof, no points. So one of the components of the certification process that we work on quite closely with clients is actually pulling together the evidence, ensuring the evidence is auditable from a BLAB point of view and actually substantiates the claim that we're making. Often we'll actually uncover areas of evidence that clients, for example, didn't even realize that they had that could help substantiate a sustainability claim. So, for example, we were working and have been working with a recycling firm in Perth. And when it came down to his environmental impact, he's like, well, we sort of, pull stuff in and we recycle it, and we do this. And then as soon as we started to dig in a bit more, he actually uncovered a spreadsheet that he had been tracking for the last 2 years. It actually highlighted every single piece of material he had been able to recycle. Every single piece of material he was able to not actually put into landfill and either, again, recycle, upcycle, or in some way divert from landfill. And what we actually were able to determine at the end of his massive spreadsheet was the amount of tonnage he was able to redirect from landfill, and consequently the amount of both GHG and carbon he wasn't able to generate as a result of redirecting from landfill as well. So, some of these practices and some of this evidence are within the business. It's a matter of then uncovering it and being able to actually package it up in a way which it does substantiate the claims for the certification process once you actually go into the BLAB queue. There can be up to 200 questions to review your ESG practices. And these questions are determined on the pathway that you actually initially place yourself on. As you do go through the questionnaire, and I've had this question actually in the last couple of weeks where I had a business owner call me up and say, I need B Corp certification for next week. Can I just download the questionnaire and I'll fill it out and submit it? It doesn't work like that, unfortunately. We wish it would, but then I think a lot of the credibility around the BLAB certification, the B Corp certification wouldn't hold any water. As you do go through the questionnaire itself, there are what we call gateway questions, where if you do answer a gateway question, it can actually open up additional questions. There are questions that aren't scored with any points. They'll be 0 out of 0, but again, they will actually open up or close additional questions. And other questions which are most definitely scored, anything from 0.1 of a point all the way up to 10 points once you do make the change of legal requirement within your constitution as well. So again, the questionnaire itself is quite dynamic. The questionnaire that you might be served as a small business with 15 people will be very different from a questionnaire that would be served to a enterprise-wide organization of 1,000 people. You find that even as you do go through the questionnaire itself, that questions disappear and they reappear based on how you've actually answered previous questions as well. So at points in time, you think you might be losing your sanity, but that's not the case. That's very much the algorithm in the background serving you the questions and the way you need to be assessed based on how you've actually responded to earlier questions as well. Lee, can we move on to the next slide, please? So the 5 key areas of assessment from BLAB's perspective are governance. So that's really around policies and practices pertaining to your mission, ethics, accountability, transparency. That will look specifically at women in leadership roles. It will look at your governance structure. That's the area in terms of where you're asked to actually change your legal requirement so that decisions for the organization are actually made for all stakeholders, not just shareholders. And that really is the section that sort of guides the next 4 sections you'll be assessed on as well. Workers is a very interesting section as well. It really starts to both highlight opportunities for you to put policies in place from a best practice point of view. And also, I think, helps you to package up some of the things you might be doing, but not realize you might be doing as well. So this would be touching on things like parental leave policies, ensuring that you're actually paying all of your team and all of your staff, not just a minimum wage, but a living wage. Those two are very, very different. I think even in markets like New Zealand, a minimum wage versus a living wage, there's a difference of about $1.50. So even if you pay your employees a minimum wage in New Zealand, you're not paying them what's considered a living wage. That will look at, like I touched on, parental leave policies, be looking at how you're caring for your employees from a health perspective, which is fairly straightforward in Australia because everyone is actually able to access Medicare. We'll look at superannuation policies, retirement policies, and what you're doing over and above the standard government mandated initiatives. Community is looking at your economic and social well-being of your supply chain, how you're looking at engaging with your civic partners, and also looking at the diversity of your supply chain, equity across your supply chain, and inclusion. So for example, it will look at proportion of your suppliers that would be female-led, would be First Nations or Indigenous-led, any areas in your supply chain we're actually supporting and have a policy to support underserved populations. This is quite relevant for anyone that is working with NDIS as well, because I think there was one person on the call who was working in that space, and again, significant impact to your community. Environment is the real heavy data-driven component of the assessment as well. So it will ask you to look at all aspects of your environmental impact and environmental footprint. It will cover air, climate, water, land usage. It will look at how far you will be asking your employees to commute to work every day, what your virtual office setup is like. If you actually have a virtual office setup that includes responsible disposal of your employee working from home, whether it be tech or any type of components as well, and what you're doing in terms of conservation and putting policies in place to actually mitigate your carbon impact over and above just actually looking at carbon credits. And the last one would really be around customers. So what you can actually contribute in terms of value for your consumers, looks at customer stewardship, really dives deep into data privacy, quality assurance, how you actually solicit customer feedback, what you do with your customer feedback, and how your product actually has significant impact for your customer base as well. Lee, I'll just get you to move on to the next one. And this is just a summary of some of the key points that each of those 5 sections actually includes across governance, workers, community, environment, and customers. Now, the really quite interesting aspect of the assessment is what's been highlighted here in red/pink. And these are what's called impact business models. Now, I might get Sarah to touch on these at the end from a 4 Pines perspective, because I know that your impact business model is around resource conservation, which I find absolutely fascinating coming from a brewing company. So Sarah, I might get you to touch on that at the end as well. But these actually look at intrinsically components of business models that have been built into your business model that have significant social or environmental impact. So I'll give you a couple of examples. There's the 4 Pines example, which I'm hoping Sarah can touch on and address later on. But if we look at, for example, who gives a crap? So what's built into their constitution is that 50% of their profits are actually donated to sanitation initiatives every year. Now, this isn't a sort of, 1 month we'll give 5,000, the next minute we'll give 10,000, next month we'll give 10,000. It's actually built into their constitution that 50% of their profits are donated to sanitation initiatives. So that is intrinsically built into their business model. And just to give you an idea of the scale of what they've been able to donate, since inception, they've been able to donate, I believe, over $42 million to sanitation initiatives. So they've got a impact business model within the assessment called Design to Give, which is really about giving back to their communities and being able to actually, again, build it into the business model as a mandatory and not an optional. Another example would be the Key Cups as well. Their impact business model is around toxin reduction, which is very similar to other businesses out there as well, by taking and removing waste to landfill. So because they're providing a product which is ensuring that disposable cups aren't used, their impact business model is based on toxin reduction and, again, removing landfill waste. So Lee, I'll just get you to move on to the next one. So this is just a little bit more detail on the impact business models. Businesses can have more than one impact business model. Again, it's an exceptional standout in terms of how you're having exceptional social and environmental impact. The mandatory one for Australia is the 10 points where, again, both Lee and I mentioned it, the change must be made to your constitution that actually generates decision-making for all stakeholders, not just for shareholders. And Lee, I'll get you to move on to the next one, please. And then this is just a bit of an overview of all the IBMs that sit within the assessment process as well. So there's everything from renewable energies. So how do we actually produce products that reduce GHG emissions on the top left-hand corner, through to, in the middle on the right-hand side, design to give, which is the one I touched on, through who gives a crap. And then other additional IBMs or impact business models where you could be potentially providing a service or a product, again, with significant environmental or social impact, but then being able to package it up as an IBM for assessment within the B Corp assessment process as well. And Lee, I'll just get you to move on to the next one. I'm just touching on other opportunities within the assessment process as well. Once you actually go through and complete the initial assessment, there's an opportunity to actually align your goals with the UN SDGs. So I'm sure everyone on the call, if you're familiar, have touched on B Corp and anything to do with sustainability, you'd be familiar with the UN SDGs, which were really established in 2015 as 17 key goals to ensure that your initiatives are aligned and cascade up to what the overall global goals are. So this is actually a globally used framework. We work with businesses in terms of aligning both their B Corp goals with their UN SDGs. We would recommend that most businesses don't align with more than 4 to 6 UN SDGs, because then that becomes impossible to achieve. But then really being able to focus in on where your business has the most material impact. And then again, where you're able to actually align that to a globally recognized framework and allow you to even publicly announce where and how you are aligning to the UN SDGs. And the next one, please, Lee. This is a bit of a fun exercise that we like to do. There's the B Corp directory, which is accessible to everyone. We can send the link around at the conclusion of the call. But this allows you to go in and actually look at other businesses that have gone through the B Corp process and also what they've been able to score. So we've just done an example here around coffee manufacturers and coffee roasters. So you can see across coffee roasters, they've been able to score anything from 83.2 for Propeller Coffee in Canada, all the way up to 23 Degrees Coffee in Australia at a score of 112.7. So this gives you a bit of an idea in terms of where and how you can actually benchmark your business around comparable businesses. It will actually give you access to help you understand what impact business model they've been able to actually access as well. So you can see along the bottom, some of these have been able to access impact business models around supply chain poverty alleviation, which would be around ensuring they're aligned to any type of fair trade certification to ensure coffee suppliers are being paid a fair and equitable sum for their product, through to toxin reduction and remediation, which may be products around brewing, which wouldn't have a disposable element to it. So it's just a really interesting and fun exercise to go through as you go through the B Corp directory and see where and how other businesses have been able to score and where they've been able to score as well. And Lee, I'll get you to move on to the next one. And what and how can you contribute, and what does that mean in terms of the post-certification process as well? What we do is we work with numerous businesses around how you can actually use that certification to be able to engage not just your customers and your shareholders and your employees, but defining your other stakeholder groups and being able to actually engage and measure value for them as well. So it's not just looking at a very single-minded engagement model, being able to actually communicate and measure value for all of your stakeholders across the sustainability spectrum. And Lee, I'll get you to move on to the next one, please. Excellent. Pathway for B Corp certification. I'm just going to take a bit of a little sip of water. And the next one, please, Lee. So this is a very high-level roadmap in terms of some of the steps that we work with in terms of taking clients through that certification process as well. I think the first one is really around being able to actually really get that team and leadership buy-in. So for larger organizations, that's really getting buy-in from the C-suite and from the board level, from smaller organizations, from the founder, from the owner, from the co-founders, and really being able to actually both communicate the benefits of going through the process, but then being able to actually ensure that there is sufficient resource, and time allocation to help the teams complete the actual certification process, but also the evidence gathering as well. The next component is really around learning about the legal requirement that we've touched on, and that's really a change to the Constitution around making decisions for all stakeholders, not just shareholders, and then initially taking the first pass at the BIA, which is the B Impact Assessment. Now, you can actually sign up for the B Impact Assessment for free. You can actually put in your company size, annual revenue, sector that your company works in as well. And it will start to put you on a track in terms of questions that will ask you as you're being assessed as you go through the BIA as well. You can complete as much of it as you can and then come back to it and bookmark it. If you decide not to go down the B Corp certification pathway as well, it's actually an excellent tool to benchmark against other organizations and other businesses of similar size that are in the same sector as well. So it'll allow you to benchmark as well, and allow you to actually identify areas of opportunity to help frame your sustainability approach and where some of the gaps might exist as well. The next stage along the roadmap is really around preparing the docs and the evidence. Like I said earlier, no proof, no points. That may take anywhere upwards of 6 months. We're working with some clients where it's taking upwards of 12 months based on the complexity of the business, but really being able to actually ensure that that evidence is in place, ensuring that once you get to the evaluation and verification stage, that everything is buttoned up as well. The final pass the BIA is really ensuring that all the information is there. Every single question that you've actually made a claim against has evidence against it, and you're actually above the 80-point threshold to actually submit. And then the final stage is actually around submitting and reviewing. Right now, there is such significant demand for B Corp assessments and evaluations that right now the waiting period is upwards of 12 months. So even if you decided to go on the journey starting today, you're probably looking at certification and verification to happen towards the tail end of 2024. So it's a significant commitment in terms of time, but also, just providing a bit of a reality check that it doesn't happen overnight, that it will take a bit of time to actually get you through to that evaluation process as well. Upwards of 40% of companies don't make it through the evaluation and verification phase. So again, it's ensuring that all the evidence is documented, the evidence is credible, and the evidence actually substantiates the claims that you make, because we wouldn't want any of the businesses that we work with to be in that 40%. We definitely want you to be in the 60% that are verified and given the B Corp credential at the end of the process as well. And the next one before I turn over to Lee, just some things to keep in mind in terms of information that you'll need. And this is some of the basics of things prior to going into the BIA. A payroll register and employee roster, even an employee handbook would be fantastic in terms of being able to actually reference a lot of the policies and existing documents that are already in place. A list of your significant suppliers, so top 80% of your suppliers by dollar value. By dollar value and dollar volume, not by number of suppliers. A breakdown of revenue from our various products and services, if you have multiple products and services as well, because that will be assessed as part of the questioning process. Your latest P&L, which will be, again, for most people here, the end of financial year 2022. And then any type of resource use tracking. So that includes energy, GHGs, water, and that's usually tracked through energy bills, or if you operate a fleet of vehicles, any type of credit card statements or statements you might get from a petrol or diesel supplier as well. And then number 6, finally, your sustainability and corporate responsibility goals. So again, what you've done in the past, how you've been able to actually track, and more importantly, what and how you're able to actually track that progress and improvement over a period of time. And I'll hand over to Lee to point out a few things in terms of key considerations and handy reminders before you wrap up for Q&A. Lee, I think you're on mute.
This is a great checklist of handy tips and reminders to go through as you're considering undertaking your business impact assessment. So the first one is to save all the documents and calculations is really important as you're working through this. Typically with clients, it's about, for each of the questions you answer, actually having an evidence bank. So a folder created for the evidence and the documents, so that for each of the questions, you've got an easy reference point. I find that particularly useful. When you do that first pass, don't be dismayed if you gain a score under 80, because the BIA is intentionally challenging. Our tip is that once you have all your documents and your evidence, that you're looking for a score pre-evaluation and verification of around 85 to 90, because we find that usually the verification process does knock off a few points. And the other thing is growing your confidence as you're doing the BIA. So start where in a section, e.g. maybe workers or community, where you've got confidence. And the other thing is that there is a great knowledge bank within the platform, the Business Impact Assessment platform. And so you can use those handy how-to guides to help build out a lot of the evidence that you require for tools, policy templates, processes, etc. And familiarise yourself with the structure is important. Rob has already mentioned that questions may change, appear and disappear. And as I said at the start, once you're on that track, if you amend the track, your question set will change. So don't be concerned. As Rob said, you're not losing it. You can, that may happen, and it's something that's a feature of the assessment process.
Excellent. Did you want to hand over to me to wrap up?
Yes, I was just trying to move to the next slide. So sorry for that.
Yes.
The screen is frozen. That's the problem. So
no problem. On the next.
Oh, there we go. There we go.
We skipped that one.
There we go.
There we go.
So now over to Rob.
Oh, thank you. Just a bit of a screenshot in terms of what the landing page looks like to get started. So it's fairly straightforward to sign up and start exploring what the impact assessment looks like. And happy to share the link after the call. We'll pass that through to Stacey for her to distribute as well. And then just to wrap up, once you get started and once you get stuck and have any questions, Lee, if you can move on to the next slide, please. I'm more than happy to jump on a 30-minute call to help you out. So again, here are my contact details. Happy to set up an initial discussion and help you with any hurdles, any questions, or any challenges that you come across as well. So that is the introduction to B Corp and a bit of an overview. And might turn over to Stacey and perhaps Sarah to share your experience with B Corp and the certification process, particularly the IBM.
Yeah, thanks so much for breaking that down, Rob and Lee. That's really helpful because I think sometimes it just feels super overwhelming. People want to do the right thing, but they're really not sure what's involved. So that's great. And a big thank you to Sarah Turner being here today. Like I said, she's representing Four Pines and they have gone down this pathway. So I guess it'd be great, Sarah, if you could just give everybody a little bit of an insight into the process and how it's benefited Four Pines as a whole.
Thanks, Stacey and Robin Lee. That is such a fantastic presentation. It can be quite difficult to express what B Corp is because it's all encompassing so many areas across your business, and that was just very clearly presented. So Four Pines have been B Corp certified since 2017, so 5 years now. And the reason for us becoming B Corp certified in those early years was because we had already, kind of instilled within our culture and values that we would think about our people, our employees, and the communities we were operating in and the environment. But our business was growing and we wanted to just align as we were growing to ensure that that didn't get washed out, so to speak. So we identified B Corp and decided that was the path that we would go on. And since then, we've had 2 other recertifications, one just last year, and there's a lot of work involved, but it's absolutely worth it. Great from an employee retention point of view, signaling that, you're walking the walk, not just talking the talk. Really good for consumers. They can trust when they're purchasing and supporting a B Corp business that they are supporting a business that is verified for the highest social and environmental impact with that third-party certification, and it signals that you take what you do seriously, and there's not much room for greenwashing within that as well. So Rob just mentioned the IBM. So Four Pines was recognised as best for the world and the environment. So in the top 5% of all B Corps, we were recognised for our environmental impact. And unfortunately, this year, in our last recertification, our point score dropped quite a bit and we weren't able to retain that IBM. So the IBM, to have that impact business model, it was for the environmental innovative process. In the last few years, our business rapidly changed with a lot of growth, and as we were acquired, so we have a number of other facilities that are third-party brewing as well as our own. And when Rob talked to making sure you have all of your evidence and documentation in one place, and Lee mentioned that too, easy accessibility, we weren't so good at that, and we were sort of scrambling at a point to try and gather it from our third parties. So we weren't able to retain the environmental innovative process, but what it's really done is given us the fire, and desire to keep chasing and be better. When you become a B Corp certified business, you're on a pathway of continuous improvement as they continue to update according to best practice, new scientific research, that you're expected to go along that journey. And as they sort of mentioned, they are introducing 10 new standards, which will be minimum requirement for all businesses to adhere to. And it's really just evolving so that businesses are the best that they can be for our environment, people and planet, whilst we can still turn a profit at the same time. That's a little insight. I don't know if I talked too long. My apologies.
No, Sarah, that was absolutely brilliant. And apologies, I'm just going to your IBM that's on the B Corp directory, which still has the IBM listed on there as well. So,
okay.
But I think you raise a really important point around the evolving standards and the increasing standards as well. And we're not seeing that just around how B Corp and B Lab are assessing businesses, but across the board, sustainability expectations around your sustainability commitments aren't going to decrease. And if anything, they're probably going to, or most likely will actually increase in terms of expectations, both from employees, from shareholders, from customers, across the board. I don't think this is actually going to go away in the short, medium, or long term. But I think you hit another sort of nail on the head in terms of documenting the evidence. and not underestimating the amount of time it actually takes to pull the evidence together and ensuring the evidence is robust to make the claims that you've put forward in the BIA as well.
Yeah, absolutely. That's one of the biggest recommendations. And, you know, what we walked away with is now everything's all in one place. We're constantly reviewing that and updating it. There's numerous stakeholders across the business that have to drive it to make it successful, and it's good. It means that it's an all, you know, everyone across all departments and teams are responsible, and you get good engagement. But yeah, it's also driven us to go for other certifications. So we signed up to be, you know, great place to work and be benchmarked across those within our industries and outside of our industries. And we've done that now for the last few years. And so, yeah, I guess you start at when we first started with our B impact assessment, we were at about 50 points, and then we worked to progress to get above 80, as you said, as your journey. And then we got up close to 100, and we're back down to the early 80s with the intention to get back to where we were, you know, come next recertification and fulfill the new 10 standards as well. So it's an inspiring movement to be a part of. The other businesses and the connections and networks you make are fantastic. And yeah, it just makes you really proud to work for a business that cares about people and planet, as you know. And as I said, you've got to make the money as well, so profit too.
And you make great beer.
Oh yeah, it helps as well. Yeah.
Excellent. Were there any other questions that anyone would like to table? I know, Suzanne, you had one around the copy of the questionnaire. I just wanted to address that, is that there's no static copy of the questionnaire. What the best way to do it is actually sign up for the BIA and start exploring the questions that are going to be relevant for your business. So again, sort of no static questionnaire. Sort of, you know, there are commonalities across the questions around living wage, diversity of leadership team, but when it gets down to sort of more of the granular questions, they will be tailored based on again, the type of business that you are, sector that you work in, and geography that you're actually headquartered in as well. One of the things that we learned was working with a business that had 49 employees, and the categorization of employee and business size, I think, is 25 to 49. They hired their 50th employee. We changed the number to 50 employees and above, and it completely recalibrated their entire questionnaire. So if you're looking at submitting in, say, for example, 6 months' time, one of the ways to actually answer the questions in the questionnaire is to future project and look at what and how the business will be shaped in 6 months down the line as well. Any other questions from anyone?
Hi, yes, I have some questions.
Oh.
Thanks for that. That was great. So my understanding is it's not just about your environmental impact. It's about choosing suppliers and other people to partner with who also are sustainable and all that jazz. So the NDIS is my only supplier. So we're quite pigeonholed with that. We can't go elsewhere.
Okay.
Does that limit us too much?
No. That wouldn't limit you at all, but then I think there would be opportunities within, because you'd be running it as a for-profit business, correct?
Yes.
Okay. So nonprofits, if you're categorized as a nonprofit, you actually can't become a B Corp. Okay. But if you're, one of the mantras from B Lab is profit, people, and planet. You need to be a profitable business in order to actually have an
to be sustainable. Yeah.
Yeah.
To be able to do this stuff. That's right.
Yeah. Not making money. So I think from a supplier point of view, that's not an issue. I think where it would actually work to your advantage is looking within the impact business models and the impact for the community and being able to actually serve.
And the people that we serve, our clientele. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. And what's the cost?
Initially, there is I think it's right now, but could be wrong. To actually do the assessment is free. Yeah. To actually submit, there's a fee of, don't quote me on this, $250. But then there's an annual licensing fee, which is based on company revenue. So we can send that link through, and it's quite
okay. So it's worth just playing around with the questionnaire and just seeing like where you are to begin with. If you're close to the 80, and
Correct.
then you'd engage someone like yourself to consult through the whole process.
Yeah, or we could actually help you out from the very beginning in terms of setting up teams against each of the areas, being able to actually ensure that it is more than just going through a questionnaire. It's very much a stakeholder engagement piece as well, an employee engagement piece. We're finding that with some of the businesses that we work with, going through the actual questionnaire is the functional way of doing it, but then there is significant opportunities to engage a wider group of employees, particularly your sort of younger demographic who really want to be seen as drivers and leaders in the sustainability space, but also want to educate themselves in regards to ESG. There's also, I think, when you look at some of the questions, it helps to both refine and define the type of business that you are, particularly in the governance section. So, again, some of the questions that we had with the group we were working with a couple of weeks ago were around breastfeeding policies for new mothers. So, even though they weren't able to actually gather any more additional points, our point of view was to say you actually do need a policy in place that's actually best practice and actually sends a signal to potential employees that you are doing the right thing. And from an ethical point of view, you do have this policy in place to support new mothers and breastfeeding mothers as well. So it's an interesting process to go through. Again, it's just not answering the questions, but there's significant sort of points throughout the questionnaire where you can help refine, define, and choose a pathway for your company as well.
Oh, thanks.
Did that answer your question?
Yeah, I mean, I'm keen just to see where we're at now. I mean, I have no idea where we would be at right now.
Yeah, I think once you actually go through and you actually starts to uncover some of the opportunities and gets you to think about things you haven't thought about before.
Yeah, cool. Thanks.
And Ashley, I've popped into the chat the certification fees link.
Thank you.
So you can see, and Rob was correct in terms of the submission fee, and just to see the other fees relating to the actual size of your business turnover.
Excellent.
Can I ask a quick question? Sorry.
Sure.
I'm an insurance broker, so I look after a lot of clients. So it wouldn't be so much for our business as such. Marsha, they're a very large international broker, and that we do have an ESG department that also has a quick pulse check that clients can do as well. So this would be, from what I'm understanding just on this call now, that this would be kind of the next step for a client to be actually certified. So would you go into like a client's business and help them, say if their score was quite low, would you go into the business and help them increase their score so they could be certified? Or does it just point out areas where they would have to do their own research or increase their own processes and procedures and things?
I think there's a couple sort of answers to that question. I think some of the clients that we work with are looking at sustainability initiatives as being compliant. So let's tick the boxes versus let's look at it as being an opportunity to create a leadership position in our category as well. So it's almost looking at it from that position and saying, what stance do we actually want to take? If they're looking at it as being a leadership opportunity within the sector or the category, then I would recommend that they actually aim for certification. And we're working with clients that are on anything from a 6-month to an 18-month pathway to help deliver and create the evidence, particularly if you're looking at complex supply chains overseas, being able to audit for modern slavery, being able to actually audit for ethical practices within supply chains as well. So that hopefully answers that component of the question in terms of being able to assist clients. Funnily enough, we actually do get a significant amount of leads through accountants and lawyers because they're actually looking at B Corp certification as a ways and means of creating business resilience and creating a sustainable business within the guise of sustainability practices. So B Corp certification is one pathway that accountants and lawyers are actually recommending to their clients to ensure that business resilience for the long term.
Yeah, it is becoming more and more prevalent in the insurance industry anyway, because there are some underwriters or insurers will ask what your ESG rating is or what your score is. And then that can affect on the insurance premiums they get offered depending on how their ESG rating is. So be very helpful if I could recommend to people to get actually certified. It would just make the whole renewal process for larger companies a lot easier.
Because then you basically have that pool of evidence to help support the certification. So we do work with clients who are looking at setting up the frameworks for going in and negotiating sustainability linked loans. So that's another area in terms of access to capital, which would actually then assist some clients as well, depending on the pathway their businesses are on.
Okay, that's very good. I might get your details and have another meeting possibly just to get some more info on it.
No problem. Stacey, should I hand over to you to do a bit of
so I'm just really aware of time. I know everybody's taken a chunk out of their day to have a look at this topic, which I really appreciate. I think it's so so good of everyone to do that. So we might, unless there's another question, I might just at least press stop on the recording. So I just want to say thank you, and I'll park it there.